أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Future Stars live on Adha TV. I'm your host Hassan Shah, and today obviously we're talking about Eid al-Adha, and so just getting into it, alhamdulillah, we've been blessed another year by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be and meet this day of Eid and witness and celebrate this Eid. It basically translates to the festival of sacrifice in Islam. That's what we're talking about and commemorating today. This theme of sacrifice is so important on this day and in this month of Dhul Hijjah entirely as well. So on this day, Muslims are reminded about the great trial which Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was put to, of sacrificing his son Ismail alayhi salam. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was compelled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do this, and by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he succeeded in this as well. So Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam is regarded as one of the most greatest champions of monotheism. He is one of the most favorite prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hold him in a really high esteem and high status. So obviously with that, you see the Quran talks about Prophet Ibrahim a lot, mentioning up to 69 times in the Quran. Yeah, he's also given other names and titles like Khalilullah, friend of Allah. Yeah, obviously he's a Nabi, a prophet, an Imam, Muslim, the one who submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, he's also called an ummah as well, a nation. Yeah, so these are just some of the names that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. So we're going to be talking about this Eid and what we normally do on Eid as well. What is the protocol of Eid? What are some of the things that we would engage in on a day like this? And also the background behind this Eid as well. So hopefully we'll able to all learn this together. So before we start, I'd like to introduce the people joining me today.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Misbah.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Mohsin.
And thank you for that introduction, Mohsin and Misbah. So today, obviously, we're talking about Eid al-Adha, yeah? And I just gave a brief introduction there. And hopefully, first of all, it's just a time to say Eid Mubarak to all the people watching at home. And I'll hand it over to you guys now to do some of the explaining and the telling that you and all that information that you're going to give us like you usually do. So I'm also in there just talking about some of the meanings of the words that we're talking about today. Eid, obviously an Arabic word, talking about a joyous occasion that happens every year. So looking for the word Eid in the Quran, Mohsin gave us an example from Surah Al-Ma'idah, yeah, where it's Isa alayhi salam talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Eid is mentioned there. Yeah, so Eid is a celebration, yeah? A celebration for us and our future generations as well, yeah? So it's an important day to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it has some spiritual message and importance, yeah? So obviously some words like that Moses said, Eid, yeah, and the plural as well, ayad, yeah, plural of Eid, and then Mubarak, meaning blessed as well. Yeah, so some key Arabic terms. Okay, then Mohsin gave us some of the Eids that we celebrate, yeah, especially as Shia Muslims, yeah. So the Eid of Friday, obviously the Eid that we're celebrating today, Eid al-Adha, and Fitr at the end of the Ramadan, and then Ghadir, and then Mubahila as well, yeah. So hopefully we're going to be able to understand Eid al-Adha, yeah, understand the background behind it as well, which Misbah Mohsin will explain to us in detail as well. So we know this Eid has something to do with Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, like I spoke at the beginning, about his sacrifice. So Misbah, I'm going to pass it over to you to explain to us Okay, start myself with the loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farijahum.
The Great Trial of Sacrifice. The story about the great trial of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam is an interesting one, and there are many lessons that can be derived from it by those who believe in Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and claim to follow his creed. To summarize what transpired, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him a son. Allah fulfilled his wish and gave him Prophet Ismail alayhi salam at a very old age. O God, grant me with a righteous son. So we gave him the glad tidings of a forbearing son. When the child attained 13 years of age, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam in his dream to sacrifice him for his sake. When the child when he was old enough to assist in his endeavor, he said, "My son, I see in my dream that I am sacrificing you. See what you think." Because it was the command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the righteous son encouraged his old father to discharge his duty. He said, "O father, do whatever you've been commanded. If Allah wishes, you will find me to be patient." Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam set out with his son Ismail to the sacrificing spot. It was certainly not an easy task. On the way, Shaitan or Satan appeared in the form of an old advising man. He tried to stop Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam from offering the sacrifice, but because of the strong faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam's determination to comply with the command of his creator could not be shaken. Shaitan then tried his luck with the young Prophet Ismail and persuaded him to escape from his ill fate. As a result of his father's invocation, Prophet Ismail was a righteous son, and he too could therefore not be influenced. Both the father and the son chased Shaitan away. They then arrived at the sacrificing spot at Mina. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam tied the hands and the legs of his son so as not to be perturbed by his pain and restlessness. He blindfolded himself and carrying the knife enacted the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam removed his fold, he saw that Prophet Ismail alayhi salam by his side, and in his place a ram lay slain before them. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam trembled lest Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rejected the sacrifice. Suddenly he heard a voice that was soothing. We called out to him, "O Ibrahim, you have indeed fulfilled the vision. Thus indeed we reward the virtuous." This indeed was a manifest trial. Then we ransomed him with a great sacrifice, and we left this blessing for him among generations to come in later times. Peace be to Ibrahim. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farijahum. That story there, that maybe a lot of people would have known already at home, but that famous story about the sacrifice and what that means, hopefully we'll talk about as well. Yeah, and understand that this is the basis for our Eid. Yeah, as well as the end of Hajj as well. Yeah, so Mohsin, you've got the next thing, so I can start Mohsin off with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Eid al-Adha. Eid al-Adha is a celebration that marks the Hajj on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. Muslims all over the world remember the sacrifice that Nabi Ibrahim was prepared to do of his son Nabi Ismail. We remember how Nabi Ibrahim put his love for Allah above everything else, and how he obeyed how he obeyed Allah's command. I need to restart. I read it completely wrong.
Okay, start from where you were reading.
Okay. Eid al-Adha. Eid al-Adha is a celebration that marks the end of Hajj on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. Muslims all over the world remember the sacrifice that Nabi Ibrahim was prepared to do of his son Nabi Ismail. Remember how Nabi Ibrahim put his love for Allah above everything else, and how he and Nabi Ismail put their trust in Allah, and how they obeyed his command. Eid al-Adha is to mark the accomplishment of the Hajj worship and to celebrate the blessings of God given to Hajj after the Hajj. In the same way that Eid al-Fitr is to mark the accomplishment of the fast, it is also to thank Allah for providing us animals as food. The meat of the animal sacrificed by the Hajj can be shared in three parts. The Hajj and his or her family can keep one third, 1/3 must be given to mu'minin as a gift, and 1/3 must be given to needy mu'minin. The Holy Quran, Surat Al-Hajj, tells us, eat from them and feed the poor person who does not beg and the beggar. And through this great act of sharing, Islam teaches us that we should think of and care for each other, our family, our fellow believers, and those who are less fortunate than us. All have a place in our lives, and it is our duty to look after one another. It is important that the meat of the sacrifice is shared properly and is not wasted. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farjahum. Thank you for that, Mohsin. And Mohsin explaining, adding on to what Misbah said about Eid al-Adha, yeah, marking the end of Hajj on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, yeah, and talking about that sacrifice of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, yeah, that big point, yeah, and also another thing that is often done is the meat of animals is sacrificed by the Hujjaj and shared in and can be shared in three parts, like Mohsin said. The Haji and his or her family. So the person who went to Hajj and their family, they keep 1/3, and 1/3 can be given to as a gift to a Muslim, and 1/3 will be given to a needy Muslim as well. Yeah, and then Mohsin gives us ayat from Surah Al-Hajj. Yeah, there's the 36th ayat there. Yeah, so just some important facts, fiqh facts that we should remember. At a Haji must sacrifice an animal on the day of Eid al-Adha at Mina. Yeah, the animal to be sacrificed must be either a camel, a goat, a sheep, or a cow. Yeah, so it can be either of these animals. Okay, so camel, goat, sheep, and cow, and that sacrifice is done on Eid al-Adha at Mina. Yeah. Okay. So I will pass over to Misbah now. So Misbah explaining what she talked about a few minutes ago. So can we start Misbah with Allah salawat? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Lesson from the Great Trial of Sacrifice. One of the things that the Hujjaj, the pilgrims to the house of God for Hajj, do on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, and so do many Muslims all over the world, is to slaughter a lamb or a sheep or a goat or a camel in remembrance of this great sacrifice of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. This act is not a mere ritual, but it has a meaning and a significance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not commanded us to sacrifice animals because He is bloodthirsty or meat hungry. In Surah Al-Hajj verses 36 and 37, He has made it clear, "Thus we have disposed them animals for your benefits, that you may give thanks." Then He subhanahu wa ta'ala adds, "It is not their flesh or their blood that reaches Allah, rather it is your piety that reaches Him. Thus has He disposed them for your benefit, so that you may magnify Allah for His guiding you, and give good news to the virtuous." So what is the significance of offering sacrifice of animals on this day of Eid al-Adha? The answer to this question is simple. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to train us to follow the path of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, who is willing to offer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala his dearest possession in form of his son, Prophet Ismail alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not want Prophet Ismail to be sacrificed, but Allah wanted Prophet Ibrahim to show his willingness to sacrifice Prophet Ismail, which he did bravely. Dr. Ali Shariat in his book Philosophy of Hajj writes, and I quote, "This is a story of man's perfection and his freedom from selfishness and animalistic desires. It is a man's ascension to a higher spirit and loves, to a strong will that frees him from anything that may hinder his responsibility as a conscious man." In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, on this day of Eid al-Adha, you should select your Ismail and bring him to Mina. Who is your Ismail? Anything that is causing an obstruction for you to reach your Lord and fulfill your duties towards Him. Your Ismail could be your wealth, your job, your rank, your power, your lust, your greed, your spouse, or your children. It could be anything, and make sure that it is as dear to you as Prophet Ismail was to Prophet Ibrahim. As you are sacrificing an animal on this day, bear in mind that you are in fact sacrificing the dearest thing in your life and telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "O my Lord, henceforth this thing which has been dearest to me in life will not hinder me from reaching you and acquiring your pleasure. Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, talking about the significance of each and every ritual that is performed during Hajj, asked Shibil, as you slaughtered your sacrificial animal during Hajj, did you intend to cut off the throat of greed that is hidden in you by clinging to the reality of taqwa and to follow the exemplary tradition of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, who intended to slaughter his dear son Prophet Ismail so as to discharge the command of Allah? Shibil said no. In that case, said the Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, you have not sacrificed your animal. Similarly, whilst giving instructions to the Hujjaj, the pilgrims to the house of God for Hajj, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam said to them, cut the throat of carnal desires and greed by offering animal sacrifice. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this great day of Eid al-Adha to grant us with tawfiq and to follow him in the path of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and forgive all our past and future sins. Salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Thank you for that, Misbah. So, Misbah, they're really explaining some of the lessons that we can take from this, and especially understand from this Eid and the power of this day holds. And also, one of the aspects that we need to understand of sacrifice, and one way of understanding it is this sacrifice that we do, we're sacrificing some of that stuff that keeps us, that is a barrier between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. This is a day to break down that barrier, yeah, and get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. So hopefully that's something that we can understand from this understanding of sacrifice. Sacrificing those things that you're so much in love with, yeah, but that love that you're holding for that thing, yeah, is stopping you from getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Misbah listed a few of those things that are one of the most common things that will keep us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. So thank you for that, Misbah. So Mohsin, I'll pass that over to you. So can we start Mohsin off with a loud salawat? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
It was Eid morning, and Nain was busy drawing to the made Eid cards, which his younger sister. Suddenly, the door handle turned, and his dad came into the room. Layla jumped up and ran to her dad, giving him a big hug. Eid Mubarak, she said, smiling. Layla. Eid Mubarak, he replied. He sat down on the carpet with the children and narrated the story of Nabi Ibrahim's dream and the special sacrifice. There's lots to do today, and we will start the day off Eid by praying Eid Salah at the masjid. At the masjid, we meet our friends and family and wish them for this happy occasion. Celebrating together as a community increases our unity and love for one another. Before we leave for Salah, we should do ghusl and wear neat, clean clothes. This is for you, Mom, and I have brought some new for you to both wear. I will go for ghusl, said Hasnain, jumping up from the carpet and rushing towards the bathroom. I can get your clothes ready, offered Taylor. After going to the masjid, the family visited the grandparents and great aunt before stopping at the graveyard. Isn't Eid al-Adha's happy festival? Why are we stopping here? It makes me sad, said and that uncle and its granddad are no longer with us, said Hassan. Their mom explained it is sad but also important for us to remember them and pray for them on happy days like Eid. When we visit them, we should think of the happy memories we have of them and pray Allah forgives their sins and sends them to Jannah. Ameen. Hasnain planted the bright yellow flowers into his grandfather's grave while his dad poured water on top. Together, the family recited Surah Al before leaving to go home. The afternoon was even busier. All of Layla's and Husnain's cousins, aunties, and uncles were coming for the big family dinner. They all worked together. Their father prepared the treasure hunt. Husnain put the decorations up, and the mother was busy cooking the food and dessert. Soon everything was ready, and the doorbell rang. Leah shouted as she opened the front door, welcoming her family in. Uh, from the Islam wants to make time for faith and fun and work in our daily lives as well. Imam Musa al-Qadim advised us to plan our days and split our time in 4 parts. Part one, faith, part praying to God to earn. Part three, summarizing and
Salawat.
message those people that
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Thank you for that, Mohsin. So Mohsin there really was reading a story that we can definitely all relate to. Is basically our Eid routines that Mohsin in that story read. So what do we understand from there? So we understand the celebration of Eid. We understand why we celebrate it now, and what's the importance of that. But now, what we actually do in Eid, yeah, on this day of Eid, yeah. So Mohsin starts off with we are doing Eid Salah, yeah, meeting your friends, family, relatives, yeah. So Mohsin also toward the end talked about Imam al-Musa al-Qazim alayhi salam advising us to plan our days and split our times in 4 parts. Part one is faith, praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Part two is work to earn a living. Part three, socializing, spending time with your friends and family. Part four, lawful entertainment and leisure. So whether we're working, spending time with others, or enjoying ourselves and relaxing, we should make sure that each part of our day is halal and that we don't do anything to displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah? And obviously we take out of our day to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by obviously doing salah and other activities like that. So just understanding that Eid is a day of celebration, yeah, but it's also a time for worship, reflection, for friends, family, and community, and to have fun as well, yeah. So thank you, Mohsin, for explaining to us about that. So next, we're going to be talking about what we do in Eid. Like Mohsin gave us an explanation from that brief story that he talked about what we do at Eid. But hopefully we can get into a little bit more detail, like of the Eid Salah, what do we actually do in it, what do we have to do, and all of these types of questions that we might have. So I'll hand it over to Misbah to start us off. So I can start, Misbah, with the last salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farjah.
Celebrating Eid. As Eid is a special celebration where we thank Allah for the blessings that He's granted us, there are a few ways we can celebrate. Eid is an opportunity to thank Allah and to remember His countless blessings. A major component of both of these Eids, Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr, is that we remember Allah throughout the day, praising and thanking Him. The days of Eid begin with the recitation of a special prayer called Salat Al-Eid, the time for which is from sunrise, though it is recommended to be prayed after sunrise, to the time of Dhuhr prayers on the day of Eid. Here's a method of praying the Salah and a few rulings. This prayer is mustahab, which means that it is highly recommended. It is not wajib, obligatory, while our Imam is in ghaiba, in occultation or hiding. Furthermore, you can recite this prayer on your own or together in congregation. Number 2, it consists of 2 rak'ah and it is recommended to recite Surat Al-A'la, chapter 87 in the first rak'ah and Surat Al-Shams, chapter 91 in the second rak'ah after Surat Al-Fatiha, chapter 1. Number 3, it is commonly recommended to recite 5 takbirs for ruku in the first rak'ah and 4 takbirs in the second rak'ah with qunut after the takbirs. So there will be 5 qunut in the first rak'ah and 4 qunut in the second rak'ah. However, in the views of Ayatollah Sistani, based on Ihtiyat al-Wajib, it is recommended to do qunut between the takbirs, so there will 4 qunut in the first rak'ah and 3 qunut in the second rak'ah. Since this is based on Ihtiyat al-Wajib, you can refer on this ruling to another marja of the same level and do the qunut according to the common method. Number 4, like the Friday prayers, the Imam recites 2 sermon khutbahs in the Salah. However, unlike Jummah, the sermons are delivered after the Eid prayer. This only takes place if the prayer is recited together in congregation. There is also a special takbir that is recommended to recite on Eid day. It is recited throughout the day and after the obligatory prayers. You can look in the dua books to find this special takbir. Furthermore, it is narrated that Rasulullah ﷺ would go out in the streets on these 2 days of Eid, chanting La ilaha illallah, which means there is no God but Allah, and Allahu Akbar, which means Allah is greater, in a loud voice. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So thank you for that, Misbah. Yeah. So celebrating Eid. Obviously, Mohsin gave us that story there, and he mentioned in there Eid Salah. Yeah. So Misbah explained in good detail about our Eid Salahs and what we do. Yeah. And some good explanations there from Misbah if you didn't already know. So now you have the understanding from Misbah. So I'll just mention a few of this stuff. It's you can pray it furada on your own, but obviously way more recommended in congregation. Yeah. So it's mustahab while the imam is in ghaiba. Yeah, and it's 2 rakats. So and Misbah gave the surahs in which so Surah 87 in the first rakat, and then Surah Shams in the second rakat. So obviously both after Surah Fatiha, and then you read 5 takbir, and the first, and then 4 in the second. Yeah, and like we have our Friday Salah, Jummah, yeah, we often have 2 khutbahs, 2 sermons before the Salah starts. But for Eid namaz, those khutbahs are after the namaz. Yeah, so you would do the namaz first and then have the 2 khutbahs. But in like a Jummah Salah, you would do the khutbahs first and then you would do your 2 rakat Salah. Yeah. So good explanation there by Mr. Okay, so Eid in history, yeah. I think Misbah's got something on that, so I can start myself with the loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Eid in history. The 8th Imam Ali Ridha Islam, was forced to be the crown prince under the Caliphate of Mamun or Rashid. As such, he was forced to move and live in Iran, away from the holy city of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, which was in Medina. Imam alayhi salam was in Marv when the day of Eid al-Fitr occurred, and Mamun asked the Imam to lead Salat Al-Eid, but the Imam refused and tried to decline the offer. As Mamun insisted strongly, the Imam finally agreed on the condition that he would lead the prayer in the same way the Rasulullah ﷺ and Imam Ali alayhi salam used to lead them. Mamun agreed to this and told the ministers and military commanders and people to go to the door of Imam Ali Ridha Islam early in the morning to pray. Many men, women, and children sat waiting for him on the street and on the rooftops. When the sun rose and the time for prayers came, the Imam washed and put on his clothes. He wore a white turban made of cotton, applied some perfume, and took his staff in his hand. He told his servants to do as he did. He was barefoot and began walking towards the place for prayers. He would walk a little and then say Allahu Akbar out loud, and everyone would repeat after him. When the people and military commanders saw him coming in this manner, they also dismounted their animals, removed their shoes, and started walking barefoot with him, doing whatever he did. It was a sight to behold. One of the Muslims there described it by saying, "It seemed to us that the sky and walls were answering him, and that Mars shook with weeping and clamour." One of Mamun's aides warned him of what was happening and advised him to ask the Imam to stop leading the prayers. He feared that people would revolt against Mamun after this prayer. Mamun sent a message to the Imam that he no longer had to lead the prayers, so the Imam returned home without leading the prayers. It is said that the people were left in confusion because they weren't sure if their Salat Al-Eid had been properly performed without the Imam. This story shows us the way that Rasulullah and the Imam alayhi salam would recite Salat Al-Eid and the potential that it has to be a powerful prayer that brings us closer to Allah. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farjhum. Thank you for that, Misbah. Yeah, so just a short story there from Eid in history, and they're just talking about Eid al-Fitr, a story there, some important things to think about there. So thank you for that, Misbah. So other acts of worship on Eid, yeah. So a lot of things that we know is obviously the celebratory thing and other stuff, and obviously we understand that this is a day of importance to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So thinking about worship is an important thing as well. Yeah. So is one way to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his blessings, especially on a day like any Eid day, is to share your wealth. Yeah. And just referring to Eid al-Fitr, yeah, it is wajib for the head of the family to give zakat on Eid, yeah, and he or she must give roughly 3 kilograms of basic and staple food to the poor on behalf of themselves and for every dependent member in their family. Yeah, so that's on Eid al-Fitr. So one thing that we can take from that, even on this day, is the sharing of our wealth. Yeah, and that even comes onto what we do on Eid al-Adha as well. Yeah, because it is wajib on someone who is performing Hajj and mustahab for everyone else to sacrifice an animal and distribute its meat to the poor. In addition to this, we are encouraged to give charity and give gifts to our families and friends. Yeah. So that's just some important other acts of worship that we can do, yeah. And on this day of Eid, on the day of Eid, it is important to be joyful and celebrate the occasion with your family and friends and fellow Muslims. Eid is a time to visit one another, exchange gifts, and eat together. Greet one another with happiness using the greeting of Eid Mubarak, which means have a blessed and happy Eid. When we pray for one another, we build bonds of community and cultivate a love in our hearts that unites us. Eid is also an opportunity to remember family and friends who have passed away and visit them in the cemetery and pray for their souls. There are so many oppressed Muslims across the world who may not be able to celebrate in the same way that we are. And as we celebrate, we should also pray for their safety and their well-being as well. Yeah? So how can we do this? How can we have this faith in action? Yeah. So when planning our Eid celebration, we try to follow these 3 principles. Do something that connects you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remembering and praising and thanking him. Think of the ways that you can share your joy of Eid to those who are less fortunate than yourself. Think of ways to have some halal fun and enjoy yourself by spending time with family and friends. In addition to it being halal, try to make it something useful and something that will gain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. So, just some key points to sum up what we've talked about today. That the Eid is used in the Quran to describe the occasion where the table of food was sent from the heaven to Nabi Isa alayhi salam and his disciples. Eid al-Adha is a festival of sacrifice, celebrates the willingness of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam to submit to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Eid is a time to remember, praise and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his magnificent blessings. Giving charity, building bonds with our brothers and sisters is an important component in celebrating Eid. So that's just a summary that hopefully I've been able to summarize what you guys have taught me and the people at home today. So I thank you at home for joining me today and understanding why we are celebrating this day of Eid, what is the background on it, and what are the things that we should do on this day of Eid, as it's a day of celebration and a day of getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and especially Eid al-Adha, this time that we should be sacrificing those things that are a barrier between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, as this life ultimately is a journey to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every single day that we are on this earth. So I thank you, Mohsin and Misbah, for explaining those important facts and those information to us. And I thank you at home for joining me on today, on this day of Eid, and most importantly, Eid Mubarak. Hopefully your friends and family are all okay. And that's pretty much that's it for us, isn't it? Thank you for joining me on this special day of Eid. Eid Mubarak to everyone. Hope your friends and family are all okay. And thank you for joining me on today's show. I'll see you next week, same time, same place on Hidayat TV. But until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.